Welcome back to Overtime here on WOTM. Mark, you teed us off really nicely with the end of that last segment here, as now we talk about the Atlanta Braves. And for these past couple of weeks, we've talked about the inconsistency of this ball club and kind of inconsistency with some certain players. However, something to hang their hat on this weekend. I know the Dodgers aren't having the kind of year that maybe people thought they would have at the beginning of the season. It's still one of the best ball clubs and the defending champions. I honestly think that the Braves have a lot to hang their hats about as far as being happy about how they played. Lost game 1, but came back and won games 2 and 3 over the weekend. What does this actual series, what does this win, this 2 out of 3 over the Dodgers, do for this club?
I think overall in baseball, there's a lot of things that aren't normal and that are inconsistent. And the Braves have been consistently inconsistent.
Right.
So they have been consistent, but not in the inconsistent way of being consistent. And then when you look at what Atlanta does going into the game, they've hit a lot of home runs. And their offense isn't one that's going to beat you with singles. They're going to beat you with extra base hits because they have one of the highest OPSs. Acuna is one of the home run leaders. So many of their players are having power years. Albies is a guy that is second in the league in doubles after a slow start. So I think going into this series, the Braves had a chance to see how good they were against a team that they had a chance to get revenge at. Because last year, remember, they blew a 3-1 lead to the Dodgers.
That's right.
And most people would probably say the Braves were lucky even to be in that position because the Dodgers were considered the favorite anyway. When you get that close, and then when you're in a position where in one of the games, it looked like the Braves really could have won one of those games in advance. But when you get that close and you don't, it stings, and then it carries over definitely to the next year. Going into the series, they wanted to see how they matched up against the Dodgers.
Right.
Not playing necessarily their best. And especially Max Fried, who lost one of those games, wanted to come out and prove something. And then Charlie Morton, here's a guy that you bring in to get you to the World Series.
Exactly.
And then they're facing 2 of the best pitchers in the National League and baseball going back-to-back. After Friday night, which to me had to be the ultimate frustration for Atlanta, where you only allow 4 hits.
That's right.
And you allow 8 runs in the 5th inning, you wind up losing 9-4, and you're kind of saying, how did this happen? And that leads into Kershaw and Bauer. And this is the 12th time that they've pitched back-to-back.
Right.
They had finished 1-1 8 times. They had lost 2 one time, and they had won 2 twice.
Yes.
So they weren't going to, the fact that they've lost back-to-back games, the first time that the Dodgers and them lost back-to-back games, the other time the Dodgers lost those games, but Kershaw and Bauer didn't get the losses, which they both got on Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
And you saw on Saturday it was the Braves' top 4. It was Acuna, it was Freeman, it was Albies, it was Riley, and it was Swanson. They went 7 for 17, 4 runs scored, 5 RBIs. They were the keys to getting the win in that game. And then on Sunday, you had some of the role players, guys like Almonte, Adrianza, Inciarte, who has taken a backup role with 2 RBIs.
Right.
And then Albies, again, getting a big double, where he's had now 6 games in a row where he's had a double, to kind of lead those guys with the backups. They were able to get execution from their bench players and from the regulars.
Right.
Then the other thing that happened this weekend was their bullpen came up huge.
Yes.
You look at A.J. Minter, Chris Martin, and Will Smith. Pitched back-to-back days. Will Smith got saves in both games, wound up striking out the side, and you saw a little bit of excitement in him.
Exactly.
Kind of like, we did what we wanted to do. We fought through. We beat 2 very tough pitchers.
Right.
And I think this was a big moment for the Braves where you can point to it and say, there are certain points in the season where you need to take steps, where you need to show that you learned from last year, and you're able to beat the best that the National League provides, even when you're not playing your best.
Right.
And overall, especially when you win with your backups, and your regulars aren't the ones, because at some point in the season you can't count on your regulars to come through every day. So when you have games like that, it really makes the team grow. And I think Adrianza, Almonte, and Inciarte, these guys are going to be relied on more heavily as the season goes on. We'll see how many guys that they bring up from minor league system, which is doing pretty well too. So I think the Braves proved something to themselves this year when at the same time they told the Dodgers, we sent them a message. We can beat your best
For sure.
back to back.
Yes.
So don't think that can't happen in the postseason.
2 Cy Young Award winners, and the new one, the Trevor Bauer, who came in, obviously having a good season for him and for this ball club. And I do think it's kind of a statement series, and we'll see if they can kind of carry that momentum moving forward. One of the things that you did highlight, we'll talk about it here, is that Braves bullpen. And one of the things about the bullpen in those last 2 games against the Dodgers is you got the chance to really see what happens when a staff kind of comes together and they're able to kind of put together those complete games. Because the bullpen was part of the reason why the Dodgers had the lapses that they had at the beginning of the year. They couldn't save games to save their life.
I know.
And that's one of the bugaboos of that team early on in the year. And it's good to see the Braves, coming out and really showcasing their dominance on that side.
And if you remember going back even to the 2019 season, the NL East, their bullpens were an absolute abomination.
Right.
Every bullpen was exploding. I remember the Mets blowing like an 8-run lead to the Nationals in the bottom of the 9th, where I'm on the phone with my girlfriend. And I'm like, I can't believe what just happened. That I just witnessed this with my own 2 eyes. So bullpens for a couple years now have been imploding. And to me, it's not a surprise, because what are bullpens anyway? There are pitchers most of the time, especially the guys that aren't the closers, that weren't good enough to be starters. However, I think more and more managers are starting to see we need to put better guys out there. So we need to kind of draft these setup guys to be really our guys that maybe aren't just extras. Okay, and you see with Tyler Matzik or A.J. Mitchell, you guys can throw hard.
For sure.
Luke Jackson can throw hard. They got Shane Green coming up now, who they just brought back from Gwinnett. So I think as overall as we've seen the season go on, and again, as we talked about, the pitchers going longer into games where we saw Fried go 7 innings, and the bullpen had to go 4 innings in Charlie Morton's start. But I think now most of these guys are going at least 6 innings, and then the bullpen will be able to get a rest. So you won't have to use guys as consistently on back-to-back days. Will Smith will be able to get a night off here where Luke Jackson can fill in or Shane Green can fill in. That's what the better teams do. And I think Atlanta will have a bullpen that's big enough because they got a lot of guys out there from both sides that can throw hard. And that's what bullpens have become. And that's why there's a lot of inconsistency. And there's, when those guys got to go back-to-back days, their fastball doesn't have as much jump on it. So I think that look at this performance against a very good Dodgers team. And I think it gives the Braves something to count on a little more when the bullpens kind of let them down a little bit the first half of the season. Definitely it's been the source of a lot of their losses.
No doubt about it. As you pointed out, Will Smith got the save in both those games against the Dodgers as well. So lots to hang their hat on as the Braves move forward into this week. Well, coming up next here on Overtime, we go from the current Atlanta team to a former now Atlanta football player. Julio Jones, the pride of Foley, Alabama, on the move to Tennessee. We'll talk about it coming up next.